the name Corpse Paint came about.
For me, it's just like an electric jolt.
The real ugly side of humanity, and their music sounds like it.
I always wanted to be a band that was approachable to people, that was just regular ass people.
Yo, what's up? So before I start this episode, I want to bring up two really good friends of mine that I've met along the way. They've been the backbone and really the biggest supporters of this podcast since day one. Everything visually you see with this podcast has been done by Wither Designs and Benny Bones Art, and it could be your band next. Check them out on social media, get yourself something unique and original, and yeah, let's do this. So I started the day off by listening to your episode with Blake Richardson, and holy hell, what a conversation. Like, I mean, podcasts to me, that was just a perfect example of what a podcast should be, because like I feel like the whole fact of interviews have kind of lost touch within the last like couple years, and to me, like, that was a genuine approach to like figure out a little bit more about that guy.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. That's really like something that Naveen and I go for. The interview format, I agree with you. I spend a ton of my time listening to podcasts, and the longer non-interview format is the coolest part about it, that you get to really explore uh a person's background in a true way, or you kind of get a feel for what they're doing right now, as opposed to all of those like interview questions that come up. So I totally agree with that, and that's much appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was just very cool because like I said, I mean, I've done these and I did the formal thing for a while, and then I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna start asking just random fucking questions. And the thing is, like, you get on that like press thing when an album drops, you talk about the album and stuff, and that's not really what people want to hear, to be honest with you. I mean, you probably understand that too.
Yeah,
Like,
of course. That's not what I want to talk about most of the time. I enjoy getting it out there and letting people know this is what we wrote the album about. This was our thought process behind the album. All of those things are cool to talk about one time. I mean, the internet is everything's getting thrown on the internet, and every interview is there. So if people want to find that information just off of one interview, they can do that. And then
right.
after that, it's a little tired, and I always find myself wondering when I encounter those type of interviews, why do this? Why get another one of these interviews out there? It doesn't really make sense. People do want to hear. I want to hear people who I'm interested in really speak their mind and really talk about the things that they're interested in right now, and not necessarily just this one moment in time where they were writing an album.
Right. Exactly. And I think, to me, the best part about a band is like the mystery. I mean, like, it, like you said, the internet, you get everything, where the band's from, what the dude does outside of the band, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, like I said, it's a tricky thing with interviews. So I'm going to try to bring up some new things for you.
Cool.
And I went off of a few interviews, like written interviews online, and I wanted to just kind of like dive deeper and like find the gray area.
Cool. Sounds good. I'm a long-winded talker, so you found the right person.
Perfect. So the first thing I really want to start with is the whole Resident Evil Dead by Daylight.
Oh yeah.
One of my friends, Danielle, the first ever podcast I ever did was with Danielle and Serge of Autumn. And I'm just kind of curious as to how this offer even came about. Like, did this catch you by surprise?
It totally caught me by surprise. So I don't know how much I'm actually able to talk about the company that we were hired through, just because it hasn't formally been announced yet. But essentially, there is this guy named Sebastian who has been doing voice acting for a long time. He's a metal vocalist, and he's worked in a lot of monster games, doing
Mhm.
voices for monsters. And he started to find himself in a situation where companies were asking him for more and more voices. So he has a team in Canada that he hired of vocalists, and it kept growing to the point where he's getting asked for people who could speak in certain dialogues.
Right.
So, there are Americans who are doing it, people from Mexico, Canada, all over the world. And Sebastian uh, found me through another friend of mine, Simon, who is in a band called Beyond Creation. And
Mhm.
essentially, through Sebastian, I auditioned for this game. I didn't know what I was auditioning for because in the gaming world, there's so many, it's very secretive, and you have to sign NDAs to get essentially any
I did not
information.
know that.
Yeah, it's super secretive. So I tried out for the part, not knowing what I was trying out for. I recorded a couple of lines, I pulled my computer out to my living room and recorded a couple of lines in Ableton and sent them in, uh, and got the part. And only after I found out that I got the part and then signed an NDA was I told who I would be playing. And
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Is it like
so
can you say if it's like a main character or not? Like, that's as far as deep as I'm gonna go with it. I don't wanna, like, pull it out of you, but
well, now it's okay. The game is already out. So
okay. Oh,
I
shoot.
yeah, yeah,
I don't play video games often. I
I don't
just
play
got
them at
back
all.
into it, but, I
It
mean, that's amazing. Just the
Yeah.
fact that that game is huge. It's absolutely massive.
Yeah, and the character that I, voiced is Jill Valentine, who if anyone out there knows about Resident Evil, Jill Valentine is an iconic character in the
That's
series.
perfect.
So, yeah, uh, that's how I got it. I mean, it's sort of insane. Like I said, I don't play video games. I've played a couple in my day. Like, I was really into the 4th Grand Theft Auto. Uh
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I play games like that, and I'll really get into a game, and then just I think the latest console I have is like an Xbox 360. So,
There we go.
yeah.
You don't wanna get the new systems, really. I mean, it
Yeah,
they're just the same things over and over again. But,
yeah, totally, and honestly, I'm just the type of person, if I find myself too invested in a video game, if I'm messing with it for hours, I just feel like I could be doing something else, like drawing or
that's me. That's exactly me. Like,
yeah.
it's the same thing. I think it's the artist thing in us that it's like we could be creating something, but instead we're just like shooting zombies or something.
Yeah, I think so. I just if I'm doing that, I feel like I'm procrastinating on something else that's going on in my life. Though that Call of Duty Zombies game is fun as hell. Like I've
Oh,
had
it's awesome.
yeah, it's a lot of fun and I've played it quite a few times, but yeah, I'm just not really a gamer at all. So I didn't even really, to be completely honest, I didn't know anything about Jill Valentine until I got the part in the game, and then I did a bunch of research because I'm that type of person. If I'm doing something, I want to know a lot about what I'm taking on, and then I found out how iconic the character was. But in a way, I think that it helped me to not really know what I was dealing with because I wasn't nervous about uh doing it at all. There
That's
were just
perfect.
no nerves
That's
attached.
definitely like how do I put this? Like if you're in front of a stage, you never know if it's gonna be 2 people, 3 people, 3,000 people.
Yeah.
I've noticed that about artists, like photographers. Um, they're very I don't know, they can adjust to situations better than a lot of, like, normal people that
Yeah.
I've met. Um,
Absolutely. I mean, being yeah, it took something out of it. But the other people who were in the game, and Danielle's one of them, uh, they all knew. Well, Danielle didn't really know, actually. I think we were kind of both in the same boat because you're talking about Danielle Evans, right? Who you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So um the other two people who got parts, Gerard and Riley McShane, who is the vocalist of a band called Legion,
Oh yeah.
they were stoked because we all four of us were told at the same time, and they were freaking out. And Danielle and I were kind of like, "Well, we don't know, we don't really know anything about these characters that we're playing, but this is sick. We know the name Resident Evil. Who doesn't know that?"
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. So the first thing I ever well, the first like person I've ever been told that was on a video game was Travis Ryan of Cattle Decapitation.
Oh yeah,
And
that's
I
rad.
and I thought to myself, I'm like, holy shit, man! Like these metal guys are gonna start being in like these huge games. And and then I saw the announcement of that game. I'm like, whoa! Like
Yeah,
this could be like the next thing. Because it's
yeah,
like it's easy pickings for um game makers because they're like these guys sound amazing already. We don't have to train their voices or anything like that.
yeah, exactly. So, without saying too much about what's going on, I really think that that is true, that we're going to start to see a lot of metal vocalists in a lot of games portraying a lot of horror characters and monsters. And of course, doesn't it make the most sense that the people who are out there living life doing monster voices, doing the voices of demons, are the people who they're starting to cast in these voice acting roles? I mean, we know how to make those sounds without hurting ourselves. And it's
Right.
not something that I could imagine that a normal voice actor is encountering ever.
Yeah. It
They're
takes
doing
years of experience, you know.
right, exactly. And there are a lot of things that I did in the studio that were really easy for me because of all of that practice that I don't think, like making the sound of getting choked out, which I had to do a lot, or curdling screams like you're getting
Oh
stabbed
man.
and things like that. It
Like
makes a lot of
panic
sense.
yells, whatever the hell you call them.
Yeah, and doing them for an extended period of time because I I personally tracked I think for 3 or 4 hours straight. So just knowing what to do with my voice over that period of time, I think, helped me in a great way.
Um, so you're a big fan of Dying Fetus,
Yeah, I
and
fucking love Fetus.
yeah, you and Naveen are like, I read that that was like one of your favorite death metal bands of all time.
Yeah,
Um,
we both have that in common. Absolutely.
so with that band, like, what was the experience, the first ever experience that you ever had with that band? Was it like at a record store or just listening?
I can't remember. I get it mixed up as to whether it was me seeing them live or hearing Destroy the Opposition first. I can't really remember. But I did see Fetus a lot. It was probably I got into them way after Naveen. So I think I got into Fetus in like '07,
Okay.
and I saw them. So I really can't remember the first experience, which is kind of funny because they're a band that I love with all of my heart. But yeah, I mean, Fetus just brings to me, they're like the first original actual deathcore band, even though it's a funny term and it's something that we wouldn't associate with Fetus at all. But they truly are a perfect blend of metal and hardcore, or death metal and hardcore.
Yeah, I see that because they're very like groovy. I mean, a lot of
Yeah,
hardcore is like super like you have to bob your head to it. Like,
totally. And a lot of
um,
the vocal patterns, I mean, it's all like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's not it follows like the groove. The vocals follow the groove because John's playing guitar, so he's, following what he's playing on guitar most of the time. So it reminds me of it in that way. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
I wanted to bring that up because that was literally my last show, the Dying Fetus tour, and I was like, you know, they crush it,
yeah.
and they're like still killing it.
I love that
I
about them. I'm so
They're
happy that
just
they're
like
still playing.
they've been around for so long and they just still grind it out tour. And I did like an in-person documentary interview with them, and the drummer, he's such a cool dude, Trey,
Yeah, yeah.
so down to earth. And
I don't know them.
that to me in a band is like what makes me want to support them. Like there's a lot of musicians that are the opposite, and you could tell right away.
Of course, it's true. I think that, like, in death metal, it's a little harder to be that, you don't come across people who are not down to earth, especially who are in bands like Fetus or who have been doing it that long. Uh,
Yeah.
you don't come across, like, people who are not down to earth very often, but you're right, you get 'em it's just like people in the real world, you get them with inflated egos and you get them super down to earth. I've never met Fetus, but that makes me happy to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah, they're totally chill. Um so I noticed that you're huge into like dotting, like artwork and stuff.
Yes,
Uh,
I am.
it's a form of meditation, you said, and I'm just kind of curious if there's any other hobbies you have that have that same effect. Like obviously like getting on stage and like saying what you got to say is true meditation, but is there anything other than drawing that might do this?
I mean, working out or actually meditating or doing yoga, all of those things I think bring a part uh, or bring along that feeling with them in a more literal way. But I do draw a lot. I do like wood burning. I've been working on a couple of pieces a lot lately. So I do a lot of things like that that are just they require a little more patience. Writing lyrics can be like that as well, and performing.
Right. Oh yeah.
Uh yeah. I like to do things like that a lot. Um Honestly, the aim is really to have everything in life be that way, even down to driving, just being in sort of a meditative state with all of it and really experiencing each moment. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I mean,
very easy to get caught up nowadays. There's just so much shit going on with the world, especially now.
there totally is. I mean, even cooking, I love cooking. It, it is easy to get caught up in like the craziness and the anxiety of the world, especially with Facebook and Instagram, social media, and all of these things telling you like which way to go and just this over infiltration of information that exists. But yeah, I really think that there's finding that balance can be important. And I'm not saying that I do that all the time everywhere in life, but that's definitely what I aim to be like. I don't want to let
Right.
all of this weird shit consume me, I want to live the life that I have. That's really like my something that I care a lot about.
Right. I feel like we only realize that, with age. I mean, like
Totally.
coming when I got into my 20s, I started really being like, you know what, I want to travel more. And I mean, for you, is it the same way? Like, you know, what was your mindset when you were like 15 versus 20 with, living life,
Oh
really?
my god, it's hard for me to remember that far back. I'm 33, so that's a long time ago, but I don't know, things just changed a lot, I definitely wanted to travel more. The more that I got into music, I think that even at the age of 15, like I wanted to really experience the world but yeah, I mean, teenagers are a little more uh high strung, at least in
Oh
my
yeah.
case, a little more eager to grow up and eager for the world to pass by quickly. And the
Yeah.
older that I get, the more that feeling subsides. I really now it's almost like I'm looking at death. Death is staring me in the eyes and I'm just trying to like avoid it. Basically, I'm trying to
Right.
slow
Right.
time down. The days go by so fucking fast and that's really like one of the biggest that I think is one of the biggest things that's changed for me in the past 10 or 15 years is just that feeling that time is speeding by and I just like want to claw at it to keep it here because I mean, I only really have like 65 good years left, and
Right.
that's two of the lives that I've lived already. That's not a long time.
Yeah. The second you start thinking about like life that way, it gets a little bit crazy. I mean, for you, you probably look at that barrel and you go, you know what? I'm gonna tour the world at whatever cost it is. Like money doesn't really matter, or whatever the fuck it is, the obstacle.
Yeah, that's the thing I've been chasing. Is that what a white pony is, or is white pony Coke? I don't know, but I've been chasing that high my whole life essentially. Ever since I found out about music, I just want to chase that, and I haven't stopped. And I guess that's why I'm talking to you now, because I just haven't let that go. That's one thing in my life that, I mean, I haven't changed very much as a person. Like my goals have remained the same, but I've watched, I've played music with so many people who stopped playing along the way or let other aspects of life get in the way, and that's just something that has never changed about me. My passion for doing that.
Right. What do you think the difference is like from you and the people that quit? Like,
Stubbornness. I don't know.
oh,
I
okay.
don't know. Really have no idea. I guess I don't know. It's just me choosing every day to pursue this, and making that conscious decision every day, and them not doing it. I don't think that there's some crazy difference.
Right.
Just that maybe I've felt this in my soul a little more than they did.
One of the coolest things from that podcast I was talking about earlier with Blake was the fact that um, a lot of people are afraid to say that they have day jobs when they're a musician.
Yeah,
Um,
it's true.
that was a really good point, because I feel like, I don't know, like when you say you're chasing your dreams, like it doesn't really matter how you get there, like you're gonna get there.
It
Um,
absolutely doesn't, and it doesn't take anything away from that dream to admit that you have to do something else to support it a lot of the time. I mean, there are so many people in metal bands. Think of how
so
many
many
people we have
talented
to
people,
pay.
it's crazy, man.
Yeah, but also just think of how many people we have to pay, you know? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
dude, metal band, it's such a niche thing, and metal bands are just spread thin because we take 4 or 5 people on the road with us. We take a merch person, a sound person. It's a lot of expense to do this thing that we love, and yeah, it's the truth that a lot of people have to have just regular old jobs to support uh their actual passion. And that's
right,
okay. That's
yeah,
totally cool. Like, it's not a bad thing that doing the thing you love doesn't support your entire lifestyle. That's okay.
right. The one thing I've been noticing with this podcast is the fact that, believe it or not, one man black metal projects, like they can earn a full on living. Like,
Absolutely. Mhm.
and I come to realization that, by you saying like 5 people, 4 people, whatever, a whole crew, like these one man black metal guys, they can just do it in their bedroom. They can make their own merch and just go for it. They
Totally.
they don't have they don't have to play the shows. They just depend on like online sales.
They're smart.
Um, but it
I can
it's
kinda
just
relate, because oh, go ahead, go ahead.
it's just crazy to me, like when people say, like, Between the Bear to me, like they still have side gigs, you know. You were saying that, but some bands that fully support with 5 people, I just don't believe it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome that they can do that. I do feel in an interesting situation with Entheos as well, just because it's Naveen and I essentially in the band.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely a way to do it. I think that it's almost uncharted territory unless you're like a one man black metal project. But there are totally ways to make it happen. You just really have to be creative. But if you don't want to be super creative and you just kind of want to be a touring musician, there's also a way to make that happen. Really, we're living in a time when truly anything is possible. And I think
You
it's,
could say that twice for sure.
yeah. So I really think that it's just important for people to make it to make it apparent and to let anyone out there know who may be chasing the dream of being in a metal band that no matter which way you want to do it, whatever, as long as it's working for you, that's great. If it's working
Right.
for you and you can still be in a band, if you come home and you're working like 50-hour weeks at a plant or an Amazon, I don't know, packaging service, whatever you're doing Uber, whatever, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're happy doing what you're doing. And you don't have to like put on a facade about what's going on, because I think it would have been it's super beneficial for kids to hear that they don't have to quit their band when they get a real job. Like the real job can just be a part of the whole picture.
Just find one a little bit like flexible, you know?
Totally, totally. That's the game. That's the name of the game, really.
Honestly, like I've been noticing a lot of bands, like death metal guys that work at like tea shops, like, like
Oh, like
mom and
they
pop.
print a T-shirt, you mean?
No, like tea, like drinks, cappuccinos,
Oh yeah, yeah.
like mom and pop shops. But the thing is, like those type of jobs are more flexible, you know?
Absolutely. I
Like
mean,
Walmart isn't making your band work if you work there. Like, no
right,
way.
right. And who wants to work there anyway?
Yeah.
But,
Hell with that place.
hey man, if you gotta work there to support tour though, fucking go for it. But you're right. It's the name of the game is just finding a job that will be super flexible with you and being such a good employee to them that they can't wait for you to get back from that 8-week tour that you're doing.
Right. You need the money for like the shampoo and stuff. When
Yeah,
you
you
get
gotta buy
back,
shampoo. Gotta buy
shampoo and
shampoo for
food.
those wavy, beautiful metal locks.
Exactly. So the next thing I want to talk about is Metal Blade Records.
Yeah,
One of my favorite record labels, probably
same,
my favorite record label of all time.
same.
Um, I grew up on it, right? And you know, what are some positive things that you could say about your experience so far? Like, I've heard some horror stories about like really, really underground labels where they're getting ripped off left and right. But Metal Blade, I feel like, is a little bit more of like a family oriented thing.
Yeah, that's definitely how it seems. I mean, the people who are at the top of Metal Blade have been there for a very long time. Tracy Vera, who just became president of Metal Blade a couple of years ago, she's worked there forever. And
Mhm.
it just seems very family oriented, it's kind of like mom and pop, but a big metal label. And that's seemingly one of the great things. I mean, they're just so hands on. They're attentive. They pay a lot of attention to just what's going on as far as the band goes. And we haven't had an official release through them yet, but everything leading up to that release has been amazing. And yeah, I just feel they're just super attentive. That's really kind of the best word that I can use. And that's really excited me about being on the label, totally aside from a lot of my favorite bands having released material there, growing up knowing about the label. Yeah, Metal Blade is essentially just the dream label for me. That's the label that I personally have envisioned my band on. And the minute we got an offer, I was like, we don't need other offers. I want to sign to Metal Blade.
Yeah, yeah. Sign it. We're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So it seems
so
like
I'm
it's go ahead.
I'm gonna pull a curveball to you
Mhm.
because you just answered that. So if you were to think back when you wrote your first song, where do you think that song would have went? Like, do you think that like 100 people were gonna listen to it, or what did you want to achieve back then?
Like with this band particularly?
Yeah.
So the initial plan with this band was just to put out an EP. I don't think any of us really knew or cared if people would hear it. We essentially just wanted to jam with our friends because uh Evan Brewer and Frank Costa, who we started the band with, Naveen, uh Copperweiss and I, they were in a band with Naveen called Animosity, um way back in the day, which is like 2000 and the 2005 to wherever era. No, I guess they were in from the early 2000s to like 2007. So they were in a band together. They go way back. The first real tour that I ever did was doing merch for Animals as Leaders on their first headlining run and Evan Brewer opened it. So I've known Evan for like 11 years at this point, and we just
There you go.
really, yeah, we just really like wanted to. All we cared about was making an EP with our friends. There was no plan. And
Perfect. Yeah,
yeah,
that's literally exactly what I wanted to hear because
yeah,
like some of the biggest bands that I've talked to have given me kind of the same realm of like they had absolutely no idea what was like ahead of them. And I feel like the bands that try to think ahead and like, say, hey, this record is going to sound really good. I think people are going to love it. Let's get it out there. It's going to get popular. It never works.
yeah.
It never does.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess you just never know with a band. And essentially, something that I think comes through in music is whether or not people enjoy jamming with each other. And that
Yeah.
was really the driving force behind our band. The signing to labels and getting tours and getting to do it for now 7+ years is just a cool by the way that went along with that first EP. And now we're 2 albums later, soon to release our third album.
Hell yeah. So I want to ask you about like the opportunities that Metal Blade could offer. Like
Mhm.
what I'm trying to ask you is basically like, if you were to sign with Century Media, what do you think would benefit being a part of that label more? Um, a lot of it has to do with PR and like tours and stuff like that. But maybe like, what are some things that people want to think of?
I really don't know. I think that it all comes down what it comes down to in the long run is, do you see your band as a band on this label? And
Hmm.
some bands fit on Century Media that do not fit on Metal Blade necessarily with the other bands. Like one thing that Naveen and I really asked ourselves when we were thinking of labels, which label has the most amount of bands that we see ourselves touring with?
Yeah,
Like the most
that's a
amount of
good
bands.
pinpoint.
Yeah, the most amount of bands that are kind of, heading in the direction that we see the band heading in musically. And that answer for us was always very clear with Metal Blade. I mean, Naveen has a solo project called Flesh Rot. Johnny Davey from Job for a Cowboy did vocals on it, but instrumentally it's Naveen's solo project. And that came out on Metal Blade in 2010. And Animosity released albums on Black Market Activities, which was a subsidiary of Metal Blade. So there is a lot of history there with the band. And just musically, there are a lot of bands that we sort of are in the same realm as on Metal Blade. And that was just it's really just things like that. What band or what label do you see your band on? It's
Yeah.
when you get signed to a label like Metal Blade or Nuclear Blast or Century Media, I think that's really the difference. Now that I've been on 3 different labels, that's what's become sort of clear with our band for me.
Like a better fitting tour package. Family, basically.
Yeah, and just I mean, that's aside from all of the other things how are the people who run the label? What's like, all of those questions that are sort of obvious. I don't know if people really kind of sit back and try to group themselves with the bands on the label. Maybe they do, but that was just something that I don't think we really truly did until signing to this label.
So you're the co-host of Copper Crab podcast, and I'm curious as by the end of the episode, what do you want to achieve? For me, it's to make the person laugh and to just basically have a good time and try to find something out unique that nobody's ever heard before.
Yeah, it's somewhere along those lines. I don't know. There's never really a specific goal. Sometimes it's just to kick it with friends and have a good time, and yeah, have some laughs and make the listener laugh a few times along the way. But really, it's just to kind of, I don't know. I don't really know what is the point of having. I really think that I have no idea. I just kind of sit down and talk, and whatever comes out comes out, and people seem to dig it. So I think that whatever we're doing is probably okay. So, I
Right.
do have certain goals, and I know the kind of podcast that I like, but I think that what people take from a podcast, it's all going to be different depending on what that person wants to hear. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's we've had friends on who had really, we had this friend on, Andrew Baird, who's the drummer of Fallujah. He had cancer when he was younger. And in that episode, it was important to kind of talk about that and experience the emotions and just hear his story about that. But in other episodes, it's more about kind of kicking it and drinking with our friends, and it doesn't get super serious, but we tell cool tour stories. So it really varies depending on the mood. And now that we've been doing it for almost 2 years, it's like every episode is just a new horizon in a way.
Right. I feel like for you, regrouping with people that like you went on tour with, I mean, I don't know, like I'm not in a touring band, but the fact that you could just say, "Hey, let's take, 25 minutes, 35 minutes to just like, catch back up from where you started." Like
Totally.
that's it's kind of tricky now because nowadays like people don't really like picking up phone calls anymore, like people like texting. I mean, the the loss of like communication is there. I
Totally.
mean,
It's true.
nowadays. Um I
Yeah,
don't know. People
that
just like don't like talking.
they don't like talking, but they like listening to other people talk more than ever.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, that was a huge thing, especially during the pandemic. I mean, at this point, we haven't been on tour for 2 years, and there are people that you're just used to seeing at least 1 or 2 times a year on the road that
Yeah.
you don't talk, you lose contact with them if you aren't directly on the road going through their city or playing with them or whatever else. So it's a cool excuse to catch up with friends and to have friends over to our house and just, shoot the shit and film it. And to sit down and have like a 3-hour conversation, which is something that unless you're actually on tour with a band, you don't always get that chance to catch up in that way.
Right. You got interruptions like guitar players saying like, "Hey man, can I borrow a guitar cable or something?"
Yeah, exactly. Or you're, doing any of the other laborious things that come along with being a touring musician. And a lot of the time it's so hard to catch up with people on the road. A lot of the time it's just easier to have no one come to the show that because then you can kind of go about your day and just get done the things that you want to get done. So it's hard to find that much time to chill with people. But
Right. It's very hard. I mean, like, I swear to God, every time I bring friends to shows, they always want to talk a lot. Like during the show,
yeah,
I'm like, this is extremely loud. How do you plan on even like trying to? How do you want me to decipher what you're saying?
I know.
Really?
I know. And we always joke about how horrible it is to play your hometown on tour because you have like 50 million people come out to the show, and even after going to 100 of your shows and getting on the guest list 100 different times, your dad can still not figure out like who he's supposed to talk to. So you're just running around all day like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to organize your entire family and get everything like say hi to grandma, say hi to mom, sisters, got all that. So it's hard to hang out with everyone on top of hanging out with all of your friends. Hometown
Yeah.
shows are as great as they are, they're also a nightmare a lot of the time. But
I mean, a
yeah.
lot of the tours that I've kind of like seen bands of your level playing, like some of the trips are like small, and then some of the trips are like 6-hour distances.
Oh,
Like
totally.
that time span to talk to the bands is like slim to none.
I know Naveen and I always get hit with that in the Bay Area because well, we just moved to Tennessee 2 or 3 weeks ago, but Naveen is from the Bay, California. He's from a place called Santa Cruz. It's
Oh
the
yeah,
Bay Area.
I've been there.
Yeah, so
Nice and warm.
yeah. So I lived in Santa Cruz for the past 10 years, but when we play the Bay Area on tour, we always have to do a 6 or 9 hour drive because you're either hitting LA or Portland the next day, and there's never a day off in between those shows. So it's very hard for us to hang out with people at essentially, his hometown show, my second hometown. And it becomes a total pain because you want to see those people and you want to hang out, especially now that we've moved away, but the drives are so long, especially when you hit the West Coast. Those drives can be pretty brutal.
I've noticed some bands like recently where they don't even like stay to the end of the show. They'll take their merch down. They'll just freaking leave because they're like, I got a 7-hour drive.
Yeah,
Like
you're never
it's
gonna catch my
unbelievable.
band doing that. We're never doing that. We're gonna make all the money that we can until those doors shut, man. We're staying till
Yeah.
the end.
Um. So what I wanted to go over next was the newest record.
Yeah.
You basically said that you wanted to have some good pronunciation. And my question to you is basically, what was your ultimate decision on going this route? I mean, holy crap. Death metal guys, it's either you can kind of decipher what they're saying or they can't. Like it's kind of
It's
tricky
true.
nowadays.
You're right.
It's getting to be honest with you, I feel like bands are getting less they can't pronounce like what they're saying. And I've
Yeah.
been listening to the music for a long time, but I think people think it's like heavier to not
Yeah,
sing.
I think it goes certain ways. You see I've noticed a lot of like the bands you would consider to be more deathcore, I guess. They have definitely been going that route. Like you just can't understand anything that they say, which is cool. I would never knock that. It's just I kind of come from that like Randy Blythe school.
Oh yeah.
The more I've always been into more enunciated vocals. I like to understand what's going on, and I think that in like proggy death metal like we play, I feel like it's sort of a popular thing to understand what is being said when they're screaming. It's something that a lot of like front people of those type of bands I think aim for. But I don't know, it's just my thing. I spend so much time on lyrics and I care so much about lyrical content that it would be a total shame for
Just
it
yell.
to go completely misunderstood. And yeah, I mean, the unintelligible lyrical thing, vocal thing will always exist because like you said, it is heavy and it really works for bands who are more about that.
Slam bands.
Yeah, and dude, I definitely have my moments where I throw in like a super guttural that you just can't hear, but
Oh yeah.
it isn't something that uh encompasses our entire or it's not something that's like put all over the entire sound of our band.
Right. I don't think Between the Buried and Me, if they had unintelligible lyrics, would be as like popular as they are. And
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
saying
totally.
be like a popularity contest, but the fact of like that band is just they're just tight in every aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would fit either. It just wouldn't sound as there's a certain vocal style for every type of music, and it's really up to the vocalist of that band where it goes, but it makes sense that Tommy is the vocalist of BT Bam. It makes sense that those guys are playing together and his voice sounds like that over that kind of music, and it also makes sense that like whatever slam band is playing slam and they're all into that kind of music. I just more so come from that school of like it's almost a hardcore vocal, a mid-ranged
Yeah,
hardcore
yeah, yeah.
type. That's just that's where I come from and that's what I like to do. I like vocals. I like vocalists like the vocalist of The Ocean and more post metal type stuff and I don't know. I can't say why I chose to do that. I just like it more.
You get you get your message across better. I mean,
Yeah.
is there any vocalists that maybe might have helped this decision to be like more in depth with this vocal style?
You mean like exploring the
I mean,
tonalities of
yeah, yeah. Like, is there any vocalist that you go, damn, man, he's got really good pronunciation. Like, maybe I should try to like push myself to be like better in that aspect.
There are a lot. I don't know of anyone that I can name off the top of my head, but there are a lot of vocalists. I look more to tonality than the way that people pronounce vocals a lot of the time. Um, but I do think that there are bands like in a more like metallic hardcore, like say the Ghost Inside or Architects or stuff like that, like vocalists like that who have more of a like pronounced style. I enjoy what those guys do. Or if you look in like progressive metal, I think that Jake from Rivers is a really good example of someone who pronounces words well. And yeah, I don't know. There are so many vocalists. There are so many voices that have sort of influenced me that I'll take a little thing from, but I think it really is mostly uh, in tonality.
I hate bringing up influences, but yeah. Okay, you brought up Randy Blythe. Um, I wanted to let you know. Have you read the book Dark Days? That's the only
No,
book he's ever done.
no, I
All
haven't.
right. Are are you like a big fan of Lamb of God?
Not anymore. I was when I was a kid. I definitely still love those first 3 albums, but I haven't, like, kept up with the band by any means.
So I'm kind of the same way, but I started reading this book that he wrote. I don't know when it was released, but it was basically all about his journey, basically to Czech, and he had the horrible murder case that he got locked up and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I think you would enjoy it for sure, so you should check it out.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely. Um, yeah, Randy was the first screaming vocalist that I remember really having a big, impact on me as far as just, "Oh, that guy can, like, scream really high and scream really low and do these mid-ranged vocals, and he's just got a range." And he was one of the first vocalists I really got into, but there have been a million along the way. Some of the notable ones are, like, Alex Arian from Despised Icon was really
Oh
influential
yeah,
to me, I Sam from Architects isn't really the type of music that I would lean toward naturally, but his voice, his melodic, like, pitched screaming vocals are really, really fucking good. Um,
right.
God, I mean, John Gallagher, I obviously love his vocals. The vocals on Frederick Thorndahl's Special Defects album, which they're said to have been actually done by Frederick himself. Those have been really influential to me. Derek Rydquist from The Faceless, Johnny Davey, JFAC. is an amazing vocalist. Tommy is a great vocalist. He's got a fantastic like mid-range. There are so many. I have so many.
You killed it though, because like every time I ask something similar to that, they're like, "Man, I'm drawing a blank. Ask me later." And at the end, they're
Yeah,
like, "Don't ask me that."
totally, dude. It's hard for me to think of a lot of people, and after I do interviews like this, I'll think of someone like, oh fuck, I should have brought them up. But Jeff Fico, who's in the Faceless, is a fantastic vocalist. Really, I look for a powerful vocal. I just really like a lot
And
of people.
attitude for sure. I
Yeah,
mean, that's got
yeah,
to be there.
yeah, absolutely. I just really like a really good, powerful vocal, and I like someone who has really good patterns.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that gets overlooked often, I think.
God, it does
Uh,
it get overlooked. Jesus.
yeah, I mean, there's some like technically proficient bands, and then they just drop like a 1, 2, 3, 4 syllable on it, and you're like, "Damn,
I
you
know.
screwed up. You
Yeah,
screwed up, man."
I really like to listen to vocalists who like to mess around with their placement. Johnny is a really good example of that. He's always throwing in like a 16th here and there, but it's not overdone. Like he'll do a drawn out part and then it'll be like a cool dotted part. I really like stuff like that.
I'm gonna
And
drop the hammer with Archspire.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, Archspire is cool. I haven't listened to a ton of their stuff, but I'm about to go on tour with them, so I'm sure I'll hear it every night.
You're gonna be like, "Let me jam with you. Let me get on stage."
Maybe. Honestly, super fast stuff isn't normally my jam, but I'm excited to see it. They do have a few like I heard a song that they put out. I can't remember the name of it. It's like I think it's the name. It might be the name of their album that they just wait, no, the name of the album is Bleed the Future. I can't remember, but it's like a horror movie video. That song was super
Yeah,
sick.
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that song is super sick. I'm excited to see it live for sure.
That I've never seen a music video so like in depth my whole like life.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really reminded me of a lot of sick horror stuff. They definitely had someone good working on like the makeup of that. But yeah, I'm excited to see them live. I think that they've got some really good tunes. So
All right, a couple more here. Basically, you basically said that I'm not always the best at getting things across when I'm speaking to someone, but with writing, it's a place where I've always really shined.
yeah.
Okay. Off of that, I'm curious as to if you've ever considered of writing a book.
Oh, many times. I've definitely considered that.
Now, what would it be about though?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I think that I would be more likely to release a poetry book than an actual full-blown novel. I was way more into writing stories when I was a kid, and then I was one of the editors of my high school newspaper. But I've always been super into poetry, and that's kind of the thing that's stuck. So that's the kind of book that I have thought about writing. I think about it like once a month, probably.
There we go.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a book out by the end of the year.
That's the goal, man. I have probably, I don't know, 40 notebooks of stuff that I'm just
Oh, come on. Yeah, just publish it.
yeah, I know that I'm just
I-
lugging that shit around at this point, waiting for it to be typed up.
I'm a horrible writer, and I've always wanted to write a book. So, like people like you, I'm just like, damn.
Well, what would your book
wish-
be about?
Oh, I don't even know. To be honest with you, music, of course, probably like, I don't know, just in general, like music.
Well, you said you're before this, so we had a bunch of problems getting onto this. Essentially, the first problem was that like I said, I just moved from California to Tennessee, and I'm on such a screwed up timeline. I can't keep like time zones straight right now for some reason.
It's all right. It's all right.
But you said you were reading while I was being just totally confused. So what book are you reading right now?
Um, right now I'm reading the Randy Blythe thing, The Dark
Oh,
Days.
dang. So that's funny that I brought him up then. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's. I mean, like I'm like halfway through it, but like every lunch break, I'm like trying to like not be on my phone. So
That
yeah,
is the
reading
way to go.
reading this. It's tough, man. I mean, like the only reason why I use my phone is to get a hold of people like yourself. Um, but otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't be on there. I mean, would you be on there if you didn't have to like promote your band or like get your shit out there?
No, that is really all that I do with those. That's all that I do with the internet. I don't think that I would. But Naveen, my fiance, he's been using a flip phone for the past 2 or 3 months.
There we go.
Yeah, so he totally did away with all of that stuff. And there were a few things that seemed like they sucked, but yesterday he hacked it and has Spotify on it now. And he
That's
bought
rad.
Yeah, and he bought a GPS. So he's kind of killing it.
That's
Um,
good. I mean, everybody. I feel like a lot of people are like backtracking and being like, you know what, this technology isn't as good as it like says it's to be. You know,
yeah, I feel like that too. And I was listening to maybe a podcast or something the other day, or maybe I was talking to someone and they were saying that their kid doesn't want to be on the internet at all. Their kid's like a teenager and
really,
thinks it's
holy
whack
hell.
that we post on social media. So maybe it's kind of going that way. I think that people predict that the world's just going to go off the rails and that it's only getting worse, but there may be a generation coming up who is actively watching what is going on with the internet and that it brings people into crazy fights with each other over stupid shit, and maybe they're kind of turning against it.
That's good. I mean, I I have a 10-year-old sister, and like anytime she's like, I gotta go on my iPad, I'm like, no,
Yeah,
I'm taking it. Like, go play outside, go do something.
I,
Like
totally. I do think that's a problem that people seem to pacify their kids with a screen. And my friends have a 4-year-old and she does not get on the computer. She doesn't mess with smartphones. And we were over at their house for New Year's Eve and she was playing with Naveen's flip phone. And she was so excited because the phone had a light on it. Because usually she plays with one of my friend's old phones that they have and it doesn't turn on. So she was so excited by this flip phone that turned on and had a light in it. And it was so awesome to see a kid who's essentially untouched by that entire world. And I think it's really healthy to
to just stay
to
away.
to
Yeah.
yeah, and to deter kids from that. We don't need, like, if a kid's acting up at a restaurant, talk to the kid. We don't need to like put a screen in their hand and like have
Yeah,
that
play
be
a game in a corner. Like,
yeah. We don't need to have that be the thing that pacifies kids because those routines that you're integrating into this child's brain are going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. That's not a good thing.
exactly. So I want to get back to the music with the last one, which is the artist of your last record.
Yeah.
Um, I enjoy that you put this in the interview because I'm kind of the same way. It basically said that we didn't give the artist much direction, and he fucking nailed it. And off of that, I think artists shine when you don't limit it, like give them limits. Really, I mean, like I have an artist that does all the podcast stuff for me, and I'm just like, hey, have slime on it, make it green, that's it, and then
Yeah.
he'll come up with something freaking crazy. What are your
Totally.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it sort of goes both ways. I like to give a little bit of direction, give a general idea, because especially now, as the band has progressed, I've become more and more the person who chooses a lot of all of the art, really. Well, I choose the artists that we work with, and then I'll speak to them about things, because essentially I'm writing the lyrics for the band, the lyrical content and the visual content we want to match and have something to do with each other. So, yeah, in the past I haven't given a ton of direction. I say a few things, and then the artist will essentially nail it. I think that Carol Leja, who did the art for our last couple of albums, did a great job. Um, and for this album, for the album that we're putting out this year, we worked with someone different who I'm really, really excited to work with. And I I can't wait to show people the cover, but I essentially gave him I told him like a few things I wanted to see on the cover, because I do want it to reflect the content of the album. And
Okay.
then he ran with it and he absolutely killed it. And oh my God.
Now was
It's, go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying it sucks sitting on stuff, you know?
Oh man, yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal to sit on stuff. So I've seen the art and I've heard the music, and that's how I view our band, but no one else has seen that. So it's a strange purgatory to sit in.
It's like for this podcast, like after I record it, I'm like, come on, let me get it out. Let me get it out. Because like otherwise I'm gonna either forget about it or nobody's gonna listen to it just because like it's gonna get lost or something crazy. Like
Yeah.
when it comes to art, I try to get it out as quickly as possible, because if I think about it too much, it's just gonna go downhill.
Yeah. It's weird with the difference between that I've experienced between podcasts and music, because I have the same feeling as you with a podcast, like, let's get this conversation out. And
Right.
that's part of what's so cool about it. We put one out once a week. I don't know how often you put one out, but yeah, there is that feeling of urgency, especially because when you're speaking, you're dealing a lot of the time in you're dealing with current things. So 5 months down the road or a year down the road, it's not really going to be as relevant as it is now. Some of it will be,
Exactly.
sure. But with an album, it's just drastically different for me, because so we've been working on this album for 2.5 years, essentially. At least if we completely changed the second half of the album, but the first half has been the same for about 2 years. And over time it just grows and you watch the sound go in different ways, and it's almost an experience, like something will happen that's external to the album, and I'm like, well, I'm glad that happened, because if it didn't happen, the album wouldn't have turned out the same way. So,
Right. The
for instance,
stress is all worth it.
yeah, and it's a piece of art that's going to be around forever, and it exists almost in a different realm than conversation does. These
Mhm.
podcasts will be around forever, but it's just a different style of being around. You can go back and listen to these in context and think about what was happening at the time, and with an
Right, we were talking
album.
about the pandemic and like
Yeah. Yeah.
listen to
So
that 20 years, people are gonna be like, this band is huge, but what are they talking about with this pandemic thing?
totally. And, yeah, you don't go out and play your podcast's greatest hits for the next 20 years. You have 20 more years worth of conversation. But bands, albums exist on such a different timeline, and they're timeless. Yeah, the albums are completely timeless. I saw a list earlier this year of 3 or 4 albums that came out around the same time in 92 or 93, and it was insane how differently I perceived all of those albums. They just seemed like they came out in completely different times from each other. It was like a hair metal album and then a Pearl Jam album and something else completely off the wall. Music is just fascinating like that, it's it exists forever, and it spans time because it's not really dealing with any certain specific thing. Of course, there is some lyrical content that it might be from the 80s and they're talking about Reagan, like a punk band talking about Reagan. I obviously don't resonate with that quite as much as I resonate with, more vague lyrics. So, but yeah, it just exists in a different way.
So when it comes to my podcast, the way I make it exist is so the first like couple, I don't know, my first 10 or 15 episodes, I would get very like self-conscious of being like, damn man, I like stuttered right here, or I like choked up, or like I just said something wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. You just get used to just saying like screw it. Like I'm just gonna like post it, and if they don't like the conversation, like just they'll skip over it,
Hmm.
Um, whereas for you, I'm just kind of curious, how do you go about that? Do you let it out? Like, how much editing do you do?
We do essentially no editing.
That's perfect, and
Yeah.
I think those are the best podcasts.
I totally agree with you. I've been on podcasts in the past where I've gone back and I've had like a 3-hour conversation before that was edited down to about an hour. And just the edits made no sense once I listened to the podcast. And that's just not the way, we were talking about how we enjoy free flowing conversation earlier, and how that's something that we enjoy about podcasts, and they're not this normal Q&A format. But when you sort of neuter a podcast like that, it takes away that reason for listening to something in this format. It's not
Right, the
just
genuine approach of just
yeah.
like talking.
Yeah, you want to hear a conversation. You don't want to hear this thing that's been completely edited to hell to say what they
Like
want
a
it to
robot.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like the highlights.
right. And
It's like not every conversation is gonna be like fireworks. Like,
totally. It's really not. And I think though that you do get better at speaking through doing a bunch of podcasts, because I used to have that.
without a doubt.
Yeah, I used to have that feeling you're talking about as well. Um, Especially in like the first interviews that I did for Entheos. Or if we would do an interview for a magazine or something, I would get super self-conscious, like, oh my God, I said the wrong thing. Or I just didn't really know. I wasn't confident in speaking to other people in that
Right.
way, like being questioned about the band constant, just answering those things. And the more that I've done podcasts and spoken to people and done things like this and done my own podcast, you just become a lot more comfortable with kind of rolling with it, and you really begin to understand that it doesn't really matter a lot the way that you said that thing, because you have the podcast next week to sort of clear it up.
Exactly.
If you're like,
Yeah.
I didn't go into enough detail about this philosophical concept behind the album, well, you can explain it next week. It's totally
Right.
fine.
I'm glad that you said that, it like boosted your confidence in talking, because I'm kind of the same way. Like I read that you're like a very like anxious person. And I mean, I'm just kind of curious as like for me, when I like started this out, I was like terrified of just like talking to random people online. Whereas now I'm like, I could go to work and I just shoot off a random question, and now like I feel like I can like interact with people a lot better.
Totally. It's almost like if you don't know how to swim, go jump in a 12-foot deep lake and figure it out. It kind of works that way. If you don't feel totally comfortable talking to people all the time, go talk to 1,000 people, and I assure you, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable after you do that.